It's cold in my compartment, but then again, I'm always cold. I adjust the knob on the temperature control despite the ice-cold heating vent before shifting to gaze out the window as the train crawls to a stop somewhere in Ruby Canyon. The conductor tells us via the disembodied voice over the speaker that somewhere amid the white stuff coating the landscape is the Colorado River. He also lets us know there are only two ways to traverse the canyon: rail or river raft. I squint into the snow now falling in huge fluffy flakes. No rafters today, drat the luck. We crawl ahead a few more yards before the next pause. This time it's a freight train that needs to get by. I don't recall what the last stop was. I've ceased keeping track. Sometimes it's a frozen switch, sometimes the drag on the train triggers a signal that forces them to stop and inspect the underside of the cars, or manually knock ice off a valve. This time it's a freight. The intercom crackles to life. We're just having a little difficulty contacting dispatch about a frozen signal and working via data, but this whole situation is going to go perfectly to plan and we'll be on our way in a few minutes. There were about 8 freight train stops last night, I heard. They were delayed by the winter weather that finally decided to appear in the final days of December. We were behind schedule by 4.5 hours when we pulled into Salt Lake City. They haven't given any updates since. I don't like not knowing my schedule, even when it's one I have no hope of changing. I pressed the yellow button on the wall to ring the attendant. I'm exceptionally happy now that I was able to get a ticket on the sleeper for this route. "Did you need something?" the attendant, James, asks from the door. "Do you know when we might get into Denver?" He laughs. I deserve that. I have a bad habit of asking the wrong question. It generally makes sense based on the rambling in my head, but I forget that others aren't privy to that rambling. What I mean is, will I be on the train for dinner? If so, I'll skip lunch. "You will definitely be on the train for dinner," he nods. "Okay, thank you." He heads down the hall while I close up the door and Amtrak blue pleated curtains, settling back to let my thoughts wander again. A short while later, James takes up the intercom mic with an inspirational message reminding us that while we are moving slowly on this white Christmas Eve, we're still making progress. It's New Year's Eve. We've regressed. That thought brings a smile, however, so I guess it served its purpose. I open the Kindle app on my phone and start scrolling through. I'm not a huge fan of holiday books, but given the Winter Wonderland atmosphere, maybe I can find something. There's a romance I like, a Civil War vet and a small-town sheriff's daughter traveling by rail in the winter. I think it's around the holidays. They get thrown together when the train derails in a blizzard and... oh, yeah, maybe I don't want to read that one. I shut off the screen and set down the phone. I don't think reading on the train suits my stomach anyway. I turn my attention back to the passing scenery, such that it is. Visibility doesn't stretch very far, but it's kind of fun to watch as shapes and silhouettes form. I try to guess what they are before we get close enough to see. We'll be in Grand Junction soon. I wonder what that means for the timetable. Tonight is not the night I want to scrounge for a ride. I initially tried to avoid New Year's in booking my travel, but this was the only train with availability. In my mind, that means I'm meant to be here and pay attention for whatever life lesson I'm about to learn. Chapter 2, Grand Junction. Finally, we've reached the rail yard for Grand Junction. It's about lunchtime now, but I have no idea what that means as far as our overall schedule, and there hasn't been an update. I peer through the rivulets of melted snow wandering down the window. Irony of ironies, my view is taken up by a long box chain of that now familiar nemesis, the freight train. I won't become too cynical though. Having reached the destination provides a good measure of reconciliatory calm. Up until we slow to a halt again at least. Now what? Are rail yards like airport lanes in that we have to wait if our designated track is in use? This time it's the engineer who greets us from somewhere in the audio passages of the call system. "Well, folks, as you can see, we've arrived at Grand Junction.
As soon as we pull into the station, we'll open up the doors for anyone who wants to take a fresh air break, but,
He's doing an awful lot of hemming and hawing, in my opinion.
And now, you see, well, I was waiting until the last minute to tell you all this, but
Now he's gone into some rambling about federal regulations.
So, unfortunately, due to the weather delays, this crew has reached their 12-hour operating max and, well, we are not allowed by law to move the train any further.
I wilt back into my seat, glancing again out the window and the line of freights, their configuration of railings and windows looking far more like a crowd of cruelly laughing faces now than they had earlier.
But the good news is,
the engineer presses on with his bumbling explanation,
the station is within sight. I can see it from my window, and our crew is coming out to meet us. They're walking down the tracks as we speak. As soon as they're on board, we can pull up to the station and give you that fresh air break.
Oh, yippee. I rub my forehead and turn in my seat to tap at the thermostat. At least we made it through the mountain first. I take in the size of the snowflakes still falling relentlessly on the other side of the window pane and decide I'm not in the mood for stretching my legs. At least not in the sense of a walk on an ice-covered platform. I leave that to the smokers. Kicking off my heels, I flatten out the seats and fluff my pillows. It would appear the only way to make any headway on this trip is to take a nap. One of the dining car attendants calls for 6 p.m. reservation holders as we glide into Glenwood Springs. The resort town glows merry through the windows, bedecked in Christmas lights and fluffy piles of snow. The staff attempts a festive atmosphere by playing music for us. It dawns on me they're missing their rest and festivities too, and doing it in much better spirits than some of the passengers. I enjoy my final complimentary glass of wine and chat with a young man who just boarded and seems confused about what amenities the sleeper car offers. From the corner of my eye, I note a familiar figure taking up the table just behind and across from me. I'd passed by the fellow solo passenger on my way into the car and recognized him from earlier meals. He stood out in a crowd. The few of us under retirement age in the highest priced accommodations generally do, but him even more so. He attended every meal wearing a blazer and tie. I can't really cast stones, being probably the only passenger in heels, but the look stood out. My guess? A college student or recent grad with aspirations of becoming an academic of some sort.
So what do you do?
The dining car attendant asks me as he waits for the meals. I return my attention forward and smile. I write romance novels.
Hoo-hoo, see? He chuckles. I knew it had to be something good. It's always the quiet ones.
He shook his head, still chuckling as he shuffled to the center of the car where the plates magically appeared from a set of dumbwaiters. Eventually, I can't justify remaining at the table. I believe there's still one seating time coming up. So I gather up my purse and check the table and seat around me, then head toward the vestibule with a wave to the attendants. The train jars to the side just as I pass through one sliding door, sending me reaching for the candy cane striped handholds on either side of the accordion folded intercar segment as the foot I was about to step with lingers in midair, waiting for the floor plates to settle. Since my hands are now occupied, I kick the lower door signal with the said foot. Once the door slides open, I continue on my listing journey toward my room, my shoulder edging ever nearer the wall, but I refuse to send out a steadying hand just yet. "Excuse me," a voice hails me as I pass by the bedroom suites. I turn about to see the young academic poking his head out from one of the rooms. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation in the dining car, and we have very similar stories." "Do we?" I lean against the swaying compartment wall. "Yes, I'm also an author, working on a piece of historical fiction. I've traveled a similar route to yours across most of the United States." We go on to compare travel itineraries and aspirations for a bit before additional passengers begin creating a dense traffic line, and I understand that politeness requires me to return to my seat. Chapter 3, Union Station, Denver. I blink my eyes open and reach for my phone to turn the alarm off. 11 p.m. With an extended stretch, I sit up and look about the dimly lit roomette to see what I want to adjust first. Since the engineer had promised the Denver passengers we'd arrive for the new year, the attendant decided not to encourage us to rest too well. He didn't come around to prepare the beds, but by now I'm fairly adept at it myself. I fold up the linens, tuck them back into the upper bunk, and set about putting up the chairs to the seated position. Not without some grumbling, of course. One or the other always has to be reluctant, it seems. With that done, there's really not much else to do. My bag is packed, so I put up and cover my hair, pull on my dress shirt and sweater, and slide my feet into my heels. Nothing left to do but wait. We've stopped somewhere again, no clue where, but outside the window there's a lone little tree aglow in Christmas lights, standing sentinel in the pitch-black surroundings. It's amazing how eerily quiet the train gets when we're surrounded by snow. I noticed it first on the trip to Portland, I think. It's engulfing, like being swaddled in a protective blanket. Ages later, at 1:30 in the morning, I recognize Denver's baseball stadium and watch as from somewhere inside, a few straggling fireworks shoot into the sky devoid of fanfare. Finally home. The instant we pull into the station, I make my way to the narrow steps leading to the main floor of the car. James helps me disentangle my suitcase from the others tetrised into the holding cubby, and I gingerly step down from the train onto the icy platform of my home station. It's cold, it's snowing, but I walk as quickly as I dare past the other weary travelers, those exiting the train like me, as well as the ones shivering on the platform who have been waiting for their train for 7 hours. I head around to the front of the station where the cabs wait. Well, where they usually wait. I'm greeted by an empty curb. I walk a few steps in that direction, halting when my heels sink into the fluffy snow. Right then, back into the station. Except the station is locked, as I gather from the argument several drunken members of a wedding reception are having with the security guard. I scoot my way to the door, rather fiercely blocked by the mercenary-looking man, and plead my case. I just need the number to a cab company. Can I ask the hotel concierge for a phone number? No cabs. He barks at me and begins to shut the door, but I take another step forward. What? No cabs, he repeats. But that's not possible. It's New Year's Eve, and this is the state capital. He glares at me and shuts the door. I look again to the street, slack-jawed. Most of the travelers lucky enough to have rides waiting had vanished into the night. A few whiny partygoers remain. Across the street, a young couple argues loudly. "Where's my car?" the man yells repeatedly as he sways to and fro. "It's at home," his girlfriend sobs, complaining about the cold. On the station side of the street, another young woman, disenchanted with the brand new year, falls to her knees in the snow and cries about some unintelligible slight. There's some shuffling at the door behind me, and I turn back to see a few of the wedding goers, previously shut out by the security guard, take advantage of people leaving from inside the station. I attach myself to their entourage and scurry into the station. Ignoring the security guards, I plant myself in a corner and connect my phone to the station internet. I'll call for a Lyft or an Uber. Oh, that's right. The internet isn't going to work even though it says I'm connected. I had this issue when I left town too. Okay, back to the original plan. The city buses run free between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. on New Year's. I march myself over to the back doors and look out the windows toward the bus depot stairs running beneath the tracks. Blocked off. No buses. With a huff, I turn in place, my attention settling on the concierge desk on the hotel side of the station. I make my way over there, eyes automatically pausing on the beautiful artwork displayed on a sidewall created by a master penman and local resident. I love that piece. Checking in? The clerk at the desk asks. No, I explain my dilemma and ask if he can call me a cab. He diligently picks up the phone, presses a button or two, speaks to no one on the other end, but hangs up and assures me a cab is on the way. He sends me back out to the empty cab stand. After another half hour standing in the snow, I decide I've been cheated and lay down my suitcase. I unzip the luggage and fish out the rain boots I bought in Portland. Traditional shiny rubber galoshes bedecked in brightly colored cartoon owls. I'm glad now I was a cheapskate and opted not to send a package home to lighten my load. These boots would have been in it. Better outfitted, I throw a final glare at the station and head out into the empty streets of downtown, dragging my suitcase through the drifts behind me. It would take me an hour to trudge up the hill and past the Capitol building to my home sweet home, and as I fall into my dust-covered, long-neglected bed, I'm no longer certain there was any life lesson to be learned in this. I'm more inclined to believe that sometimes fate just likes to play dirty tricks on people.